want to express my gratitude that you guys are putting together this vigil, because even though it was very close to my home, because I actually grew up in New York City, I was in school at the time, and I remember all the commotion firsthand. They shut down the transit system. My mom had to come pick me up that day, and we walked across the bridge. I could see the smoke while we were walking, and it was pandemonium. Everyone was walking across the bridge. People were jumping into the backs of trucks because they couldn't get buses. They couldn't get home, all these people living in the outer boroughs. But it was very much like resounded very close to me, because I knew a lot of people, kids, students, friends of mine, whose family members were victims in this event, people in my neighborhood. It was very poignant. I couldn't really grasp it at the time because I was only in 4th grade, but I'm just very glad to see that it resounds as strongly out here as it does for me back home on this 10th anniversary of this terrible event. And I'm really glad you guys are putting this together.
So on 9/11, I remember being in school, and I remember my family being really scared because my cousin was going to NIU at the time, NYU at the time, and they had to evacuate her school, and we weren't sure about if she was safe or not, and so that was just really scary for my family, because some of my family lives in New York, so that was just a really scary time for us.
I remember September 11th, 2001. I was in 6th grade. I was in 6th grade, and I just remember the principal coming to my classroom and escorting us all into the auditorium. We didn't know why. And then they played, the news clip, and it showed the towers going down, and it showed the chaos. And at the time, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why it was so significant and what it meant. I figured that the buildings were some type of old kind of buildings that meant something to New York. I didn't know exactly what it was until the principal cut the TV off, and then she let us know that what had just happened was a terrorist attack. And I didn't know what it was. I never knew of a terrorist attack. I remember in history we talk about Pearl Harbor and stuff like that, but I've never hands-on experienced a terrorist attack, being alive and well aware at the time that it happened. But I can't recall how I felt, because I figured, in my mind, I knew that if it happened in Chicago, then I would be more concerned. But me being naive and immature at the time, maybe it didn't hit me, but that wasn't until I went home. And a friend of my family had members that, were personally affected by this tragedy. So I think that's when it finally hit home that something really serious had occurred, and it would change the face of America from that day on.
So for September 11th, I was in 3rd grade, and my father's actually an airline pilot, and he flew the plane that hit the West Tower to Boston, I think it was, and then it flew from Boston to New York. So my mother was terrified and obviously thought he was dead. He was in LA before I end the story. And so the principal had to come get me out of class and explain to me, what happened and that. We're not sure where my dad is, but we're sure he's fine, and I took a half day that home and went home. So it was kind of scary. I mean, when I was little at the time, I didn't really understand what's going on. I was like, oh, my he's fine, whatever. It happens all the time. I didn't really know, and then so, 3 or 4 years later when I found out the whole story, it kind of was like, wow, that was kind of a scary thing. I don't know.
I was in 4th grade, and I wanted to have a play date. And my mom told me that I could not have a play date. And when she told me the reason, I didn't get it.
September 11th, I was in 5th grade, and I was responsible for collecting the lunch money. And so I had to bring it back to my teacher, and my teacher was crying, and I didn't know why. And then I went back, and then I was with someone else, and we were like, oh, there's something wrong with the teacher, she's crying, and we came back and we watched it a little. But then the principal didn't allow it anymore, so everybody went home. And it was really confusing for me, the first couple days, and it wasn't until the 3rd day that I even realized it was really a really bad thing, because no one was really talking about it. So.
Alright, so I remember when I found out what happened, I was in 6th grade. I was in Mrs. Gardner's math class, 2nd period, and the principal came on the intercom and said, there's been a plane that crashed in the Twin Towers. And of course, when I was 6th grade, so 11 years old, I had no idea what was going on. My friends and I were all talking, we didn't really know what to expect, and pretty much the entire day of school was just a bit of confusion. I remember they canceled recess because they said there were a lot of bees outside. Of course, as we learned later, they might have had other reasons for doing that. But when I got home and I saw my mom crying while watching the news, I realized that there was something a lot more important than just planes crashing into a tower. The attacks of September 11th meant a lot for my family, as it did for a lot of other families. but I think especially so because I came from a Muslim family. September 11th attacks kind of shed a negative light on Islam, and after the past 10 years, my family has definitely learned the importance of showing others that Islam is a tolerant religion, and showing that we're really excited to be Americans and we really want to get along with all the other Americans and living here. The past years haven't been easy necessarily for my family. There's been some negative experiences, but I'm happy to say that, you know, growing up in a pretty modern community, the past 10 years, even though despite the negative attacks, I felt closer to the country. Even though there were some negative experiences, we felt an overwhelming amount of support from the community, and hopefully this 10th anniversary marks more support and fosters more like brotherhood amongst Americans of all religious backgrounds.